from the Estados Unidos by way of OC, Los Angeles, and the West Coast. Coming to you, repping tarifas, knocking out agendas of the cancel culture and 50 cracks, breaking down doors in Hollywood for La Raza. Unashamed of the creator, because no one is greater.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to LA Times. We're back. We're back again with Julie, former correctional officer. We're going to get to her story really quick. But really quick, I just want to say thank you guys for coming to LA Times. Thank you for stopping in. Please take a second to hit that thumbs up button. That lets YouTube know that we're on, and it shares it with other people. Subscribe to the channel. Subscribing helps us big time. And also hit that notification, little bell, hit it. It'll tell you like when we drop new videos. But Julie, as far as Julie goes, this is our second interview. This is part 2. You got to hear part 1. Hear it right now. Don't stop. Don't pause. You know, you can hear it later, but down in the description, you'll see Julie's Instagram. You'll also see part 1, link to part 1. So be sure to click on it, watch part 1. You will not be disappointed. Many people loved it, man. So in LA Times, we interview everything from ex-gang members to COs to whatever, man. And we just want to say, Julie, it's a pleasure to have you back. How you doing?
Thanks, Paul. It's a pleasure to be back. I'm doing great.
All
and
right.
whatnot. Yeah,
All
doing
right.
fantastic. A little
Julie's
warm up
becoming
here
one of the
today.
regulars. Excuse me?
It's a little warm up here today, but
Yeah.
other than that, it's great.
Yeah, down here, LA, man, it's the same thing. It's really warm and, 90s and stuff. But, we went through so much in part 1. I'm going to let Julie take over now and tell her story. You guys don't want to hear me. You clicked on here to hear her. So, Julie, go ahead where we left off and just take over.
Well, I have this story about 2 very high-ranking Hells Angels members. But before I get into that, I'm going to backtrack to 1987 before I was a correctional officer. My best girlfriend and her brand new husband were out on their property where they were renting in Dunnigan. They had gone for a walk one day, and it was on the weekend. And on the way home, they found a dead body on their property, shot execution style. So her husband, of course, called 911. They came out to investigate. Well, I'm going to pause right there, and then I'm going to fast forward to when I was a CO. Well, when I became a CO in 1988, there were these 2 Hells Angels members in our old jail where we still had the bars. And they had, I'm not kidding, they had some really wicked humor and wicked laughs. And I could not believe it. When they were going to their jury trial, they were high enough in the Hells Angels to where their lawyers brought them 3-piece suits. You couldn't see any of their tattoos. They got haircuts. They shaved their beards off, the whole 9 yards. And these characters would go back and forth to court. Sometimes, I'd have to maybe put them in shackles and chains, or other officers did. Well, really, to get to the nuts and bolts, their eyewitness was a prostitute from West Sacramento, and she was high on heroin. So basically, she was an uncredible witness. So these 2 gentlemen got off. It was a Hells Angels hit murder is what it was. And these 2 guys, I'll never forget their names. I really don't want to say it on here because I don't want any repercussions from the Hells Angels. Granted, this was over 30 years ago, but hey, you never know. But I could not believe how nice they cleaned up. And they just looked like businessmen off the street. And I was like, I kind of asked my sergeant, I was like, well, how do they get private attorneys? And she and some of the other officers were telling me, when you're high ranking, and certain gangs and things like that, whether it's a motorcycle gang or whatever, they'll pay for your attorneys. Well, anyways, these two guys, they were in our jail for a couple years and, waiting their trial. They went to the jury trial. Well, they got off on this murder because the witness was incredible. So that I just couldn't believe it. But fast forward, before they got off, myself and another officer, we did lunch duty one day, and one officer has to stay in the kitchen where all the tables are, and we had north side and south side at the old jail. So I called the north side in, and they ate lunch fine, and then I called the south side in, and when they went in for lunch, there's rules stated on the wall that you're supposed to keep it to a whisper, not a loud roar, and things like that, because sometimes if they did that, it could be a sign that there might be a riot going on. So I had said, gentlemen, please keep the volume down. By the fourth time I said it, I said, if I have to say it another time, I'm taking away your yard today. Let me tell you what, these two big Hells Angels guys, they cornered me in the kitchen to where I could not remove myself. One was here, and my back was up against the wall and the window where their yard was. And for being 23, 24 years old, I was scared. I was like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen now? Well, thank goodness my partner, he saw what was going on. He called for backup. And in our old jail, the sheriff himself has his office there, the undersheriff, a bunch of the lieutenants and things like that. And some of the deputies had come in, to go to town for lunch or whatever. I'm not kidding. I never saw so many deputies, the undersheriff, everybody come in to the kitchen before. They pulled me out of there. My sergeant pulled me into the office and said, tell me exactly what happened and whatnot. And I did. She goes, no, you did the right thing, because if they talk in a loud roar like that, it could be a sign maybe that a riot's going to go on or something's going to happen. So they didn't get their yard that day and whatnot. But I'm not kidding. I ended up shaking like a leaf. And I'll be honest, I cried. Part of me was humiliated and the other part of me was scared to death. And the nice thing about it is when the lieutenants came back in, they went in to see if I was okay. And I said, yeah. And we kind of talked about maybe how I could handle it a different way, because, pretty much I'll admit I was young and dumb, and when you're that young and you're dealing with all these men and you have a partner in the kitchen there with you, sometimes that authority goes to our heads, and especially being so young, I thought, wait a minute, I'm in control here. They're not going by the rules. So they need to just start going by the rules. Well, they did get their yard taken.
Did you have a buzzer on?
I had my radio. We didn't have buzzers back then. And my coworker, he's the one that called it in. And so everybody came running. And back then, the old jail was so small that a lot of the deputies were there. The coroner was there. And like I said, the undersheriff, the sheriff, and all the lieutenants, the brass, so to speak, they're the ones that came in. And then my sergeant came in and pulled me out. So, looking back at it after 30 some odd years, I'm like, wow, I could have really handled that situation differently. Number one, I shouldn't have let the CO authoritarian go to my head, and I could have handled it differently. So that was a learning lesson there in itself.
What do you think their motives were? What were they going to do? Like, if the other CO didn't call in, what was it? What do you think? What was their aim? Do you think were they trying to physically harm you or what?
I think that could have happened because they were so angry that I said I was going to take their yard away, and they those two big guys, they cornered me, and I was a lot. I guess you could say thinner back in the days and whatnot. And I was afraid they were going to hurt me. And, I'm just thankful that his battery wasn't dead, because there'd been times we'd worked the kitchen before and our batteries were dead because we were locked in there. We were literally locked in the kitchen with all these men. And, it was less than 76 for sure because that was the old jail and it was small. So I'd probably say maybe there was like 35, 40 at the most. I really don't remember. But still, it was just a scary situation. And I really, I'll say it 1,000 times over, I could have handled that very differently. So, and they were two heavy hitters. And how far their rank went up, I'm not sure, but it was up far enough to where the Hells Angels paid for their attorneys. And plus, they were hitmen. So, what do you think? We kind of joked after they got released and not found guilty, going, we would never want to see them in a dark alley. We'd probably all be dead. A couple people were kidding about that, but really, honest to goodness, that could have been the truth, because no telling what kind of behavior was put amongst them with other officers. I don't know. Pretty much everybody did respect the inmates, and I had respect for them too. I was just trying to show that I was in control and they weren't. And it didn't go over very well. But I'll tell one other story about the old jail. In our cross felony unit, there was probably maybe, I don't know, between 12 and 15 guys back there at one time. And they caused a riot on the night shift. They started everything on fire back there. They were throwing, what is disgusting out there. They had paper out there, urine, feces, a whole bit. So our S&I team called their supervisor, and basically they shackled them all. They called Tolson prison, said, look, these guys are way out of hand and we need some help. So they took them over to Folsom to the shoe unit when they had a shoe unit over there. And so they were there for quite some time. And we were told by their commanding officer that they stripped them all down naked, strip searched them, and basically had them handcuffed naked for a while, because of what was going on over there. And then a few weeks later, they bring him back. Well, fast forward, we had a board with all the inmates' names on it. It was a grease board. And one guy's name, they never could find him. It was a year later. They realized he was still over in Folsom when he needed to be in the Yolo County jail. It wasn't funny, but we all kind of laughed at it. It's like, how could you forget one of the guys over there? And
Yeah.
I saw that gentleman later in my life, and we talked about that. He goes, yeah, you guys forgot me for a whole year. He goes, I kept telling him I need to be in the county jail, not here. And finally they figured it out and they went over and they got him.
That's hilarious.
Isn't that funny? I
Oh,
mean,
Lord. Sounds like the kind of luck I used to have, man.
oh, I'd like to hear about that someday.
Oh, man.
Oh, I'm telling you, I don't know if I should tell this story or not, but probably about 3 years or 4 years into me being a correctional officer, the facility manager at the time, she arranged for all of our shifts to go to San Quentin for a tour. So on the particular shift I was on, at the time I was working, on Sundays, and we get off like on Wednesdays would be our long week. Otherwise, we got off on Tuesdays because we'd work 3 days on and then 4 days off and 4 days on and 3 days off, 12-hour shifts. Well, she arranged for all of us to go to San Quentin. This is hilarious. She sends a memo to all of us. We get a memo. Everybody got a memo, and it said, do not wear blue jeans. Do not wear a denim shirt. Wear some type of colored slacks, not khaki. If they were, most everybody wore black, and some kind of a top. Well, one of the guys, he's always just not paying attention. And I was like, this guy's retired from the Air Force. Are you kidding me? He shows up in blue jeans, white tennis shoes, and a denim shirt of all things. And we're just all shaking our heads and laughing. So we all pile in cars and carpool down to San Quentin. And as soon as we get there, our sergeant says, we're Yolo County Sheriff's Department and we're here for a tour. And so this particular individual, guess what he got to wear? A plastic white jumpsuit. And boy, did he stand out. And so they started touring us around. And of course, they give us a spiel, we have a no hostage policy, da 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 da. And, we were like, okay, fine, because we have a no hostage policy in the jail. If they take your hostage and whatnot, basically, if something happens to you, they're not going to come in and save you. That's what a no hostage policy is. If they can, they will, but depending on how bad a situation gets, you're on your own and whatnot. We all knew that when we got hired because they explained it to us. So, they gave us that kind of little warning when we went in. We weren't scared. And the interesting thing was, so many of the inmates loved Yolo County because back in the day, they had ping pong tables, they had a foosball table, they would play handball out in their little cement yard, or they could play basketball, and then they had a weight machine. And they hated our food. Anybody that had been in and out of prison was like, oh, we like prison food better, and da 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 da. They feed us better, and we get more, and on and on and on. I was like, really? And so as soon as we get there to this one area, it's where they were classifying new prisoners, and we saw a couple of the prisoners from our jail, and when they saw us, it was like, oh, homely. Officer Tolson, Sergeant so-and-so, Officer so-and-so, and Officer so-and-so. And we're like, hey, I thought you guys liked it better in prison than you did the county jail. They said, we'd give anything to go back to the Yolo County jail because we had it made over there, big screen TVs, and we could watch TV when we wanted. There's no TV here, and, on and on and on. So we kind of laughed. And then they took us through the kitchen area. And I'm not kidding, Paul. I have never seen this before in my life. I mean, some of the guys would come back in after they've been in prison and, maybe they had to come back for court, and they're all buffed out from lifting weights. There was 3 of the biggest men. I had never in my life seen muscles that big. And they were working in the kitchen, but they were on their break, sitting at one of those little tables that sat 4 people, just like in our old county jail. Those tables sat 4 people too. Well, one of the officers that was with us, she was pregnant. So she had on her green sheriff's jacket, and it said, Yolo County Sheriff's Department real big on the back, trying to hide her pregnancy. Well, those guys, they yell out to us, and this is kind of crude. And then they noticed she was pregnant, and they said, naughty, naughty girl, like that. The 3 of us that were together that were lagging behind, we couldn't get out that kitchen door fast enough because we started busting up laughing. Because, when inmates are catcalling like that, you're not supposed to react to it, because if you do, they're going to keep doing it and things like that. So we get out there, and our sergeant goes, what are you guys laughing at? And we say, you don't even want to know. So, of course, one of them told what happened, and the whole crew just started busting up laughing. But, we said, it's not like we haven't heard crude things like that before, which to me is totally inappropriate. But, so I could go on. Mm-hmm.
Are as a female correctional officer / sheriff, are you guys told to like I noticed during my times, I noticed that a lot of the females would have their hair pulled back, kind of ponytail in the back, kind of like slick back. And I noticed it kind of like makes you look tougher, and then didn't wear a lot of makeup. Were you guys told, I'm not saying in YOLO, but other counties I've seen, were you guys told not to wear so much makeup, or not to, or have your hair a certain way? Or, because I know they teach you command presence, but I mean,
Yeah.
as far as physical appearance, what were you told as a female?
Oh my gosh, it was in our policy and procedure book that all your makeup had to be natural, no red lipstick, it had to be a natural color. If you had long hair, you had to pull it up, and if you had short hair, you didn't. Well, at the time when I was hired, my hair was about this length, but I had a perm in it at that time because those perms were popular back in the late 80s, those spiral perms and things like that. So most because my hair wasn't that long, I couldn't pull it up and it was cut in layers. But all the other ladies I worked with, they had long hair. And so, yes, they had to pull it up. And let me tell you what, I got in trouble so many times about my makeup because I've always worn heavy makeup. And recently, looking at pictures past that my mom gave me, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I wore that much makeup back in the 80s. And now I don't wear that much, but I still do like my red lipstick. Well, my lieutenant, who was a facility commander back then, his daughter and I grew up together. So he knew me like a second daughter. And he he would get so fed up with me wearing red lipstick to where I really could have got written up or fired. In fact, one of the lieutenants did not like me because I was always wearing red lipstick. My makeup was a little heavy, and he would tell Walt, he goes, you know what, I want you to fire her because of that makeup and stuff. And he wasn't going to fire me. He's known me since I was a little girl. And so, but twice a year, this is the cutest thing. Twice a year, he would go with his wife to one of the department stores and get me a brand new Estee Lauder lipstick and a brand new Lancome lipstick. And they were very natural colors. And then he'd come into my housing unit or wherever I was working. And this was a quote. He'd hand me these lipsticks. And now he goes, go take that shit off like that. And that's a quote from Walt and stuff because I don't like profanity. And so I'd have to go into the officer's bathroom in my housing unit, take off the red lipstick, and I put on a very neutral lipstick to where you couldn't even see it. It was like really clear, or just a light, little light, like kind of a brownish pink, but just so. And as soon as he'd leave and whatnot, all the inmates would come, Miss Tolson, go put back on your red lipstick. I said, are you kidding me? I said, I could get in trouble because I said, he's always threatening to write me up because of my red lipstick. And, I was just very fortunate that he didn't. But yes, we did have to groom ourselves in a certain way. And one of my other things is we all wore fragrance. And technically, you're really not supposed to because, that can be a huge turn on to men. And back in the day, I used to wear red by Giorgio. As soon as I walked in the doors to the jail, I was told that my perfume permeated throughout the jail. And the inmates would say, oh, Officer Tolson's here this morning. Because somehow, I guess, with my body chemistry, it just went up into the vent and they knew that I was there. And I'd walk into a pod, whether it was male or female housing unit. We knew you were on. We could smell your perfume. I was like, no, you can't. And they're like, yes, we can. So then I kind of started not wearing as much perfume because I was like, oh, great. That's going to be another thing to get me in trouble. But it didn't,
Hey, I got a question for you. I know I'm kind of like going all over the place, but
oh no, that's fine.
For people watching. Okay, so I know you oversaw men's facilities and women's facilities. Do you remember some of the stuff that the women would use for makeup? And also
Yes.
what share some of that stuff that's not normally makeup, but also like what were they allowed to get for commissary regarding makeup or anything?
Oh, okay. As far as makeup, oh, this is funny. They would use their pencils, regular writing pencils, to do eyeliner. They could get eyeshadows off a commissary and mascara. Sometimes I would try to use a mascara for eyeliner. And they would get a normal pencil and sharpen it just like an eyeliner. And I'm like, how can they do that? How do they do that? Because I couldn't use a regular pencil. I mean, I'd be afraid to poke my eye out because usually in an eyeliner, it's a lot softer. but they could get mascara and eyeshadows, but their biggest thing was their hair, because they weren't allowed hair gels or hairspray or anything like that. But in the new jail, we had basically a room for the women to where they could get their they had a blow dryer and a curling iron in there for them, and that's where they would go get ready. If they had to go to court, they would take their shower, go into this room. We kind of called it the beauty station, and I'm sure they called it something else, but they go in there and blow dry their hair. And the interesting thing, what they use for like their hairspray or whatever, would be sugar and water, and they mix that together, and they would kind of flick it with their comb into their hair. And back then, sometimes they would do their hair back like this, they'd flick it in here, and it was very interesting. We're like, how did you get your hair like that? And they're like, oh yeah, we use this. Well, they can have sugar and they can have water, so they didn't want to use their sugar for breakfast, and they were going to court. We didn't care, because I never found any pruno in the women's housing unit at all. So if they want to use sugar water to make their hairspray, go for it. But they were very limited on what they could get. They could get their soups and their candy bars. They could get envelopes that were already pre-stamped. They could buy paper, things like that. But if for some reason, as far as like certain undergarments and things like that, they had to come from the store direct with all tags on it, and like no underwear, bras, and things like that, especially for some of the gals that were going to be going off to prison, and all they were wearing was like the men's boxers in the jail, because they didn't provide female undergarments. So at the time, there was a policy that they could have that brought in from the store, because there was no Amazon back then or any of these other shipping things. As far as like a book or anything like that, that had to come from the publisher itself for them to get a certain book they wanted. But as far as their personal needs like that, yeah. And it would get inspected very well to make sure that there was no black tar heroin sewn in it or any other drugs. And so the security investigation team would really go through all that like a fine-tooth comb and then give it to somebody. But it's more or less they were getting that because they were on their way to prison and they didn't have any proper undergarments.
Hey, you know what? I was going to ask. So it was funny that you brought up pruno, because I was about to ask you about that a while ago. So you said you've never found it in the women's. Okay. And then this is a question for you, Julie. I'm going to check your honesty here. Okay. I know, I've done my share of time behind those bars around California. So as an inmate walking down the tier, you pass by a cell, man, you can smell who's doing pruno. Kinda, you know what I mean? You could smell it. They try to hide it. Did you ever pass by, smell the pruno and just let it go?
No, are you kidding me? That stuff is so nasty. What they would do is we had a janitor's closet, and they would call them trustees. I always called them inmate workers. And the reason I say that is when we were in our little academy school, they told us never trust an inmate and never trust your coworker. And both of those things are so true in so many ways. But anyways, we had a janitor's closet where it had a mop and a broom and a bunch of toilet paper and paper towels, because they could pull down paper towels like in the main room to wipe off their hands. And plus in our officer's bathroom, we had those type of paper towels. Well, they would go in there to get the plastic garbage bags and whatnot for the garbages within the pod unit. And they would get like 2 and 3 of these white, huge garbage bags. And, they would save their oranges, their apples. If there was applesauce sometimes. Oh my gosh, I am not kidding. I found so much pruno in so many different housing units. It stunk so bad. And I'm like, these guys got to be really desperate to drink this kind of alcohol in jail. I was just like, oh my gosh. And it seemed like I found quite a bit of that, and so did a lot of the other officers. And, seriously, Paul, have you ever tried that?
Of course, it's horrid. You know what it reminds me of? Like, I haven't drank for 25 years, just so
Oh,
you know.
wow.
And it's probably the last thing I drank of alcohol might have been Pruno. but I'm just saying, like, it's been so long for me, but man, so I whenever I have people around that are drinking and get belligerent and they throw up, the way that smells when it comes out, that's the way Pruno smells. It's just foul and nasty.
Exactly.
Awful.
It's just terrible. It's just
So what would
disgusting.
happen? What would happen if you caught an inmate with Pruno? Would it be a write-up, or what would
Yeah, it would be a write-up. What would happen is usually either a sergeant would take it out, or security investigations would come in and they would take it out of the housing unit. Sometimes I think they took pictures of it or whatever. But then, because you're the one that found it, you're the one that has to write the report up on it. And then, you can recommend taking away either their commissary for a few days, or their visits, or just have them locked down for 3 to 5 days, but they get a little trial too. So, and I'm sure when people get written up in state prison, I would think that they would get some kind of like a little hearing. And that's what this was like, a little hearing and whatnot. And who was ever on the hearing, I don't want to say board, because different people took different turns depending on who was available when the little hearings took place. And so anyways, some people got locked down for 3 days, and as we used to say, you got nothing coming, so no phone calls, no visits, you're just locked down. But you know what, Paul, honestly, I hated when the inmates were locked down, because I had to go serve as a waitress again. And I'm like, okay, I don't work at Denny's, but I always kind of would joke about it. But
I got another
you have,
question.
yeah.
That man. So, okay, so obviously there are times, and I'm sure there's times where maybe you had, or somewhere, maybe not even you, but other parts of the jail. Let's say you had the top tier was general population, the bottom tier was, let's say, higher status or whatever, or for whatever reasons, or you had to, I don't know, for whatever reason you had people separated. Have you ever seen instances where, like, you guys popped the wrong door, and then popped the wrong door when you shouldn't have? Like, maybe there was a keep away prisoner, or have you heard of that in that jail?
Let me tell you what happened one time. This was interesting. I was working day shift, and this character was coming back from court, and he was in, back then they used to wear, like, it kind of looked like the blue surgeon kind of things, like doctor pants, but they didn't have the string. They had elastic waist and the V-neck. It was all blue for the men, and the women used to wear all red back in the day. Well, this guy was coming back from court, and one of the officers started to pop the wrong door to go out to the kitchen, where the branch inmates were working in the kitchen from the branch jail. And she started to pop the door, and I'm like, close that door. He's getting ready to run and stuff. And he almost escaped through there and whatnot. So that happened one time, and I caught that. And then in our A2 housing, that's where we had 100 and 400 were classification. These guys were getting classified to go out onto mainline. And then the 200 was protective custody for the guys. And 300 was basically our hard hitters, cross felony. And yes, the doors got popped one time for the wrong thing. And it wasn't with cross felony, because they were only, those guys got out individually for their hour at a time for yard. But they popped the wrong door one time to PC. And let me tell you what, some of those other guys on mainline that or classification, which is basically they're going to go out to mainline. They're just waiting for a bed. And they had privileges out in the day room to watch the big screen TV. And somebody accidentally popped that door. And I was like, oh my gosh, shut the door, shut the door. And we'd yell on the intercom for those guys to shut the door, or for whatever officer was working on deck at the time. Because there's two officers that would work that pod, one in the control room and the other one out on deck. So yeah, that almost happened. Now, I don't know if it happened on other shifts and somebody got in there. That I don't know. But
And then was to the COs, to you guys, did you guys look at inmates a certain way? And what I mean by that, did you guys look like, okay, you guys know there's those cross felonies or the heavy hitters, whatever, and then these guys in PC, do COs look at them different? Like, they're weak, they're in PC, or you know what I mean? Like, because they build relationships with probably the mainline guys more, is there a looking at certain inmates differently?
Okay, I'll tell you this. Getting to the PC inmates, you know, when somebody's in there for raping a woman or just totally brutalizing her, and also doing weird things to a child, which are just unspeakable. Yes, they were looked down upon big time. We weren't supposed to like judge them, but you know, amongst ourselves, we were just like, you know what, because we could see, you know, what they did and things like that, you know, because we had access to the computer and their charges are public knowledge. Anybody that's arrested, your charges are public knowledge. You can call the jail and say, oh, hey, what's so and so in there for, you know? And plus, we had our Daily Democrat go in and they'd read the blotter, write down everybody's name and the charges, because they used to put that in the newspaper. They don't anymore. And I know some departments, you can go on their department to see what, you know, if you have a friend or relative in there, what they're arrested for. But oh my gosh, this one guy I went to the Christian school with, he was in my 6th and 7th grade class. He was married to one of our record clerks, and she would work in the booking area because she was bilingual. She spoke Spanish and English. And she worked there, so she would do that part of the booking, and then the COs would help, you know, control the booking area, and they would fingerprint and take pictures of the people coming in besides patting them down. Well, one night I happened to be working, and it's very unfortunate that her husband got arrested for rape, and it just, oh gosh, I just couldn't believe it, because I had gone to a Christian school with him. But just because you go to a Christian school doesn't mean everybody's a Christian. And I just couldn't believe it. And so it was like, I don't know, it was like the next day or something like that. I take it back. I was on day shift. It doesn't matter. But the next time I came on shift, you know, he called me by name because I was out working the A2 pod and I was on the floor. And he said, hey, Julie, he goes, do you remember any of the Bible verses and things like that we memorized as kids? He goes, would you mind writing those out for me? And I said, no, not at all. And I told him, I said, you know, I said, obviously you're being accused of a crime. I said, I don't want to know if you're innocent or guilty. That's not my business. But yeah, I'll write out those verses for you. So when I went home after my shift, before my next shift, I sat there and I wrote pages of verses out for him and whatnot. And they had access to Bibles in there. Some of them I didn't write all the way out. I just write the chapter and the verse. And I told him, I said, you know, I said, I'll be praying for you, because this is just a horrible thing. You know, if this did not happen, it's a horrible crime to be accused of. Well, unfortunately, as it came out, he ended up going to prison because he was guilty, even though he kept telling me I'm not guilty. But then, you know, there's innocent people that get sent to prison all the time. And thank goodness for DNA and that kind of thing. And back then, DNA was so new, you know. So I don't know if he did it or not, but I do know he was on the what does they call it, Megan's Law, the sex registered list or whatever they have now. Yeah, so it was just really sad. But let me tell you another story, Paul. I don't know if I told you this story, but there was a young man on Mainline. He must have been, I don't know, 22, 23 years old. He was in our jail for a year, and he was accused of raping his living girlfriend, which they had broken up. They had a child together, and they had been broken up for a while, and he moved on. Well, he would tell myself and the other two of my friends that we hung out with, because we were close in age, would hang out after work and on our breaks if we could do that. And he kept saying, I am innocent of this. I did not do this, and I was surprised that he was on Mainline. But I guess a lot of people knew him and knew the story, because Woodland's such a small town. And anyways, on the final day of his jury trial, they got his defense attorney got his ex-girlfriend up on the stand. She finally broke down and said, I lied about everything because I wanted him back because we had a child together. I was like, are you kidding me? And we're like, he was right, he was innocent. And whether she ever got a charge for that, for filing a false police report back then, I don't know. But here's this whole guy's reputation's out the window. And of course, on a rap sheet, that charge is going to be on there for life, even though he wasn't convicted of that crime. And I was just like, here this poor guy is. He's a young kid, and being accused of something like this was just, to me, detrimental.
Yeah, and a lot of times when that happens, the DA, even though the witness lied, the DA most of the time won't file charges against that person for lying. So you're right. The one who loses is the one who got falsely blamed and they got a jacket. And I think not on that issue so much, but we are going to do an episode with Cholo Trucker and another person on when that happened. Those misjustices like that happen,
Yeah.
and they're not really spoken about. Yeah. And then really quick, you're somebody comes up to you from the main line
Hmm.
and says, I need to go to PC. I need to go to, has that ever happened? And if so, what's the process? Do they have to go to PC? Did they have to debrief and give up information, or it's just saying I need to go enough?
Back in the day, I don't think they would really call it debriefing. I mean,
Yeah.
we had a lot of gang affiliates, to like, obviously we had a ton of Northerners in there. The problem wasn't as bad as it is today. And, in Yolo County, which Yolo County is Woodland, West Sacramento, Clarksburg, Esparto, Madison, Knights Landing, and a few other towns like Cape and things like that. And now the gang problem is just unbelievable. You see XIB everywhere and things like that. And back in the day, you didn't really see it as much. But as far as somebody saying they need to go to protective custody, sometimes it would be the other inmates coming up to us and not the individual. And so when things like that happened, or if that individual came up to us, we always would notify SNI. We'd call them on the phone at our desk and tell them what was going on, and they would come down and investigate whether that individual really needed to go to PC or not, or if these other inmates are just kind of saying that to get, to cause problems. We had this one guy, oh, I'll never forget him. I have to tell you, his last name was Disney. I won't tell you the first name, but our sergeant used to call him Walt all the time, Walt Disney. And he would just make so many jokes. And this gentleman had a horrible hygiene problem. And, it got to the point where the inmates were telling him, look, and he didn't have any money. And of course, if you have no money on your books, how are you going to get deodorant? and things like that. All they're going to give you is a fish kit, basically. In the old jail, our fish kits were, or excuse me, the new jail, Monroe Center, was toothbrush, toothpaste, a little bar of soap, and a washcloth. So I think some of the guys finally ended up pitching in and got him some deodorant and some shampoo and stuff, because the man had no money at all, nobody to give him money. And so finally he got his situation in order, because if he didn't, those guys wanted him out of there. You know, they'll do stuff like that. You know, Paul, last video you asked me if there was any dormitory styles in our jail, and I forgot to tell you about our branch jail. So can I do that for a minute? Tell you about our branch jail and the dormitory style?
Check this out. I think we're going to end it for today. We're going to save that one for the next one. We're going to save that one for part 3. Part 3.
Sounds good.
Now for about 45. We're going to have Julie back for part 3. We're going to keep going as long as it takes. And we didn't even get to where we were going to get today.
No, we were going to talk about my life after I was a CEO and about my house situation. So I'll tell that one story in part 3, and then we'll go after my life after a CEO. And
if we get
some
there,
of it is not pretty.
If not, we'll do a part 4. You know,
okay.
So don't worry, man. You're a welcome guest on this channel, man. So I enjoyed talking to you and hearing the stories, you know, and just really appreciate you, Julie. Thank you so much for coming on today. If people wanted to follow you on Instagram or whatever, where should they follow you at?
My Instagram account, it's SassyJules54, and that's SASSY Jules JULES 54. Obviously, I did it when I was 54. I'm 56 now, and I'm not changing it. I just do want to say one last thing.
Go for it.
You know, the most important thing in life is having Christ the center of your life.
Yes.
Especially if anybody has a phone out there and they're in prison watching this, which we know those aren't allowed, but they do happen. I just really want to reiterate to you guys that, you know, without Jesus, you really don't have a life, you know, and I just have a strong thing for prison ministries. I was sharing with my mom today in our little Bible study group. I said, I want to get involved in prison ministries, because there's so many people I'm finding out that were in prison and have come to Christ either in prison or when they got out. And that's something hopefully in my future that will happen. I don't know. That's all up to God, and it's something I really got to pray about. But without Christ, guys, you know, and without confessing your sins to Jesus, how can you get through this life? You know, there's so many temptations out there, and I'm not perfect because I'm tempted every day about things. And I have sin in my life every day, and we're all going to until the day we die. And for those of us that know Jesus, get to go to heaven, you know. And my thing is, I never want to see anybody I know not knowing who the Lord is and having to go to hell.
Yeah.
Because that would be terrible.
Yeah. And thank you, Julie, for that, because we you know, we're both believers. We would have gone through this whole thing and not got to the most important thing. You know, it's cool to reminisce and talk, and you know, as we're becoming better friends, but we got to remember, man, that was the most important message of this whole thing, that Jesus Christ is there and he's here for you today. And that's why the purpose of LA Times, that's why me and Julie connected, and Big Joe and everyone, man. That's so cool.
Amen.
But let me say one thing, Julie, just to throw it at you, something that you could be blessed by. You know David Rocha, right? Obviously, by now, everybody knows David Rocha.
Right.
He has a ministry at his church where, you know, I helped out one time, but where people could donate, and what they do is they send his Bible studies into the prisons. Like if you were to know someone that's locked up in there, say, hey, can you send your Bible studies to them? They'll start sending the Bible studies into prison. So it's not directly going in there, but getting the word of God in there. And I really think that's cool. So Lord, please give Julie wisdom when and how to get involved in prison ministry. You know what,
Yes.
guys? Thank you so much, Julie, for coming on.
Thanks,
Christ is the
Paul.
way. Christ is most important. And Julie, your stories are awesome. I can't wait for part 3. We'll do it in early August when I get back, and just really appreciate you. Any last words?
Of course, I always have to do a shout out and stuff. First of all, I want to shout out to LA Times,
Woo.
Tony with the current prison stories. I love his channel. And of course, Gunner, he's got a new channel out. It's Gunner Collectives with a Z now. And those of you that have been on his audience fan base, his other channel got hacked. So he's having to start all over. So if you've listened to him before, please like and subscribe to Gunner. Also, Convicts Perspectives, Cholo Trucker, and Sunny. I forget what Sunny's channel is.
Street Saint Loyal.
Okay, and also Muhammad. I always forget Muhammad's last name, but he's got a channel too. So I want to give a shout out to all those people, and my family who's listened to this, and my friends who've been supporting me through this. And I've had numerous people from my church watch this, and some of my high school friends back in Mississippi and Arkansas. I just want to say shout out and hey, Junior. That's one of my best guy friends back in Arkansas. So, and he listened to it. So he's waiting for part 2 to come out.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Awesome. This is what God's doing in Julie's life. Man, she's really known all over the place. A lot of us YouTubers who have followings, we really love Julie, and thank you. And I'm hoping Tony puts you on one day. That would be great. Stories.
Yeah. He's encouraged me. Several people have encouraged me to do my own channel. I haven't done it yet because I want to wait till we're done here, to see exactly what I'm going to talk about and what I'm going to call my channel. And also Jen Magalia, I always pronounce her name wrong. Jen Magalia with Convicted Heart. Please watch her channel, like and subscribe. She's under 1,000 subscribers. She's trying to get to 1,000 and over so she can go live. So, and she's asked to interview me also. So
awesome. Get out there. Go for it.
Yeah.
Go for it, man.
We both said that we'd wait until I was done here first.
Cool. Hey, we might not ever get done. The rate we're going.
Besides all my jail stories, I have so many other stories in my life that I can share.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So again, we're heading out, you guys. Thank you for watching, and thank you, Julie. Please take a second to hit the thumbs up, subscribe, share this with somebody who needs to hear it on social media and everywhere. Thanks again. God bless you.
Thanks, Paul.